The New Orleans Saints offense is a work in progress, but from week 1 to week 2, it definitely opened up. We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the Saints rushing defense is now overshadowing its passing defense. Spencer Rattler has shown a lot of improvement from week 1 to week 2, but we'll tell you specifically what that improvement looks like. And we're going to kick everything off with the New Orleans Saints offense, which is starting to open up. We got all that coming up for you on today's show. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The New Orleans Saints offense is very much still a work in progress. It's far from being finished, but we're already starting to see how this offense can open up, even just the leaps that were made from week 1 to week 2. So I want to highlight some of the things that the Saints have done that opened up the offense in week 2 that stood out to me, and watching and going through our all 22 film review, which we'll have some pieces of over on our insider program. You can join that with the link in the description. But we'll also have a look at some of the things that the Saints can still do to continue to open up. Remember, this season is all about progress, not remaining stagnant and not settling for anything. So even where there is improvement, though incremental, none of those should be considered as anything more than incremental as this Saints team continues to look for ways to continue to improve throughout this 2025 season. So the first thing we're going to start off with is that the Saints made a leap from just a few play action passes to several play action passes here in week 2. And for me, that was a big leap for them and something that allowed them to be able to utilize a little bit more of what we call the easy buttons in the NFL. And when we talk about easy buttons, what we're really talking about are things like motion, play action. Sometimes RPOs get funneled into that classification as well. Just things that help make your your offense a little bit easier for your quarterback. Motion is an easy button because it could potentially diagnose man or zone coverage before the snap. Play action is considered an easy button because it can help a quarterback have a little bit more time as they look to see what's going on, and also, of course, to impact that second level and defensive line of any defense that might be looking for some opportunities to maybe rush the passer. It creates a little bit of a hold for those players. And so for the Saints, going into the second week of action, them getting some opportunities in the play action game, I think came down to something that Kellen Moore himself said was a bit of a reflection that he ended up putting on himself, which was making sure that he stayed true to that run game a little bit late, or getting late into the game, right? Staying late and staying connected to the run game late in the game, if that makes sense, and not getting away from it too early, which was certainly something that was observed in that first week. So the Saints went from 4 play action dropbacks to 18 play action dropbacks in the second game, completing 9 of 15 passes, in that case for 2 touchdowns, both of which in the red zone. So that gives you a little bit of a glimpse of one of the places where the Saints absolutely opened up their offense. Let's continue through our positives of how things opened up. More attempts downfield in this one. We saw a little bit more of a concerted effort to push the ball downfield. Big 39-yard completion down the left sideline to Rashid Shaheed. We saw them try a couple of other deep passes to Brandon Cooks that were kind of on these outbreaking routes that weren't necessarily like 20 yards deep, but were explosive passing plays. And so these 15-plus yarders, we saw the Saints funnel more of those in. And even that almost touchdown strike between Spencer Rattler and Chris Olave in that opening drive is one of those things. I love the usage of tempo as they kind of slowed it down a little bit, but still continue to use tempo plays. And I think that the mesh of tempo and penalties has started to kind of even out a little bit for New Orleans. So, of course, still much progress to be made in terms of penalties. Timing routes are in the offense, more tight end usage is there, and moving pockets. These are all things that make things very comfortable for a young quarterback. So liked seeing all of those things. Here are some things I think that the Saints that the Saints could continue to incorporate in order to push that passing game a little bit further. Alvin Kamara utilized a little bit more in the screen game as well as on those famous option routes that he runs. Him doing that will also continue to help to open up that run game as well. That's another thing, by the way, that I would highlight as a positive is the Saints getting committed to the run late in the game. I know I kind of stumbled my way through a reference of that earlier, but I want to make sure I'm very clear about that when it comes to the run game as well. I think attacking the middle of the field is something else that this Saints team could do a little bit better. Just going into, just looking at this week, 2 of 8 over the middle of the field beyond 10 yards down the field. And so finding more opportunities in the intermediate and deep areas to attack the middle of the football field would be a good thing for New Orleans. It's part of what San Francisco did very effectively against the Saints passing defense. I think more RPOs could go a long way for this team as well as they get more comfortable and settled in with their scheme. It's a big thing that you kind of have to get figured out because the issue with the RPOs is that you've got to either make that decision to hand the football off or the ball has to come out quickly because those offensive linemen are blocking like it's a run play. And so if you hold on to the ball a little bit too long, those offensive linemen all of a sudden get too many yards downfield and then bang, you're getting a whistle for illegal man downfield. And so you want to stay away from those types of penalties there. So I don't blame the Saints for kind of slow playing the RPO game. But when you have 2 young quarterbacks that recently ran RPO heavy offenses in the NFL, there's an opportunity to build that. The Saints ran that a lot with both Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck during training camp. I think that there's opportunities to do that with Spencer Rattler on the field. We're not really seeing a lot of the crossing routes or crossing route combinations from Kellen Moore. I'm very surprised by this. I don't know if it has something to do with maybe the build of wide receivers or something that they just don't necessarily feel comfortable with there. Maybe that has a lot to do with sort of the lack of attention of attacking the middle of the field. So I'll be very curious to see if that grows over the course of the season or if that's been a bit of a concerted effort to maybe move to more of a perimeter attack. I'm not sure just yet, but definitely something we can keep an eye out on. And then the last thing that I'll mention here is something else that I would like to see the Saints continue to grow is the under center diversity. So for New Orleans, they have taken 17 snaps under center so far, according to our friends over at True Media. 12 of those have been rushing attempts. So if they're under center, you can almost bank on the fact that it's going to be a run. So it's becoming a little bit of a tell. Now the Saints are still throwing out of it and out of under center looks. They did it again in week 2 against San Francisco. So as long as they're doing it a little bit, it creates some level of having to play honestly. But the more that you continue this trend to where the vast majority of your under center snaps are rushes, that's going to end up causing you some trouble later. It's going to help make you predictable. So definitely something I'd like to see the Saints, a habit I'd like to see them break. On first downs alone, 11 of 14 of their under center reps have been rushes. So definitely something to watch there. So the Saints offense is opening and still has more space to open. And one of the players that's going to help them be able to achieve that is Spencer Rattler, especially if he continues on a trajectory, because he has shown a lot of improvement getting back in to the starting role in 2025. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars from people who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all of the details, and Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every make or every model of their vehicles. You can take everyday drives and you can make them feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls as well. With all-wheel drive standard across every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like all of the players that you love, they sweat every single detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode of Locked On Saints also brought to you by friends over at Monarch Money. Did you know a lot of people can't even name all of their different financial accounts, let alone what they're worth? Anything from 401ks to properties, to investments. And if you don't have a grasp of the full picture, that leads sometimes to you leaving some money on the table. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. Consider it an all-in-one control center for your finances. I use Monarch Money like crazy. I am my own business. I have an income that comes through that, but then I also have expenses like traveling for games and traveling for the combine and all that kind of stuff. And so if you have a small business, or maybe you are operating yourself as a business, Monarch Money is absolutely worth your time. You should go and check it out because it's going to take everything that you need from all those different financial apps, put them all in one place, and even makes it easy for collaboration tools as well in case you're managing with others. So don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, family, if you've been listening to the show as an everydayer since Sunday's game wrapped up against the San Francisco 49ers, you've heard me be pretty consistent about one thing, and that, well, consistent about two things, that the Saints cannot mistake progress for a final product. I am so stringent on that, but also the fact that Spencer Rattler has shown improvement and looks much better than he did in 2024, which was to be expected. He didn't have a great supporting cast in 2024. He was starting as a rookie in 2024. Now he's got an entire offseason where he actually got to, make that leap and train and get ready for a season as opposed to the draft, blah, 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 blah. A whole lot of context to that. And so I think the most important thing that's happening for the Saints right now is that Spencer Rattler is cashing in on the opportunity. Now, we're through 2 weeks, right? Now he's got some tough opponents on the road to go and take on: Seattle Seahawks, Buffalo Bills. We'll see what he looks like over the course of the next couple of weeks. But what he has looked like to begin the season is indicative of growth. Is that growth enough to become the future franchise face of this team? It's way too early to call that. Is the growth enough to propel him to looking just as good in Seattle and in Buffalo? We don't know. We'll find out. But for Spencer Rattler, there has been concrete improvement. And I wanted to, instead of just telling you that there's been improvement, I wanted to break down where we've seen that improvement. One of the first things that stuck out to me on tape, and this went back to the Arizona game, but specifically during the San Francisco game, is his processing speed. This is something that we talked about a lot during training camp, but then kind of went, you know what, got to wait and see what happens until he's in regular season action, going up against live bullets and the players flying around and full speed, full on, full blown NFL players. And we're certainly seeing it. Gets the ball out quick. He's moving along and he's kind of working through his progressions. He's being given pure progression opportunities, things like that as well. He's not a half field read guy. He's being given an entire field to read, and he's working through that, making decisions, making passes, making good choices, and also choosing to use his legs. So along with that processing speed also comes a composure, a lack of panic. I have not seen Spencer Rattler do a lot other than keep surveying the field, even when he feels some pressure. He had a big throw down the field to Chris Olave. It was the one after, it was on the same drive that they missed. It was on that opening drive where they missed that connection in the end zone. And then there was another one as he was coming across between two defenders where he kind of put the ball a little bit behind him. Well, on that one, he had Nick Bosa lined up over Cesar Ruiz. Nick Bosa beat Cesar Ruiz and then was right in Spencer Rattler's face. Spencer Rattler took a big hit and got that ball out, but he stood in the pocket. He kept his eyes up and he delivered. And we see that a lot. It's not like watching some of the other quarterbacks that we've seen under center for New Orleans in recent years, where the moment there is a feeling of any pressure, they're looking for a place to scramble and run. Rattler has done a very good job of getting the ball out. In fact, he is tied right now amongst all quarterbacks in the NFL with at least 40 passing attempts. That's 26 different quarterbacks. He is right now tied for number 3 when it comes to time to throw, 2.47 seconds. So he's getting the ball out quickly. The downside to that is that the offense stays a little bit contained, a little bit condensed, but he's getting the ball out quickly and he's making quick decisions. A lot of the sacks that he took last year, some of those came down to him holding on to the ball too quickly or too long. Him holding on to the ball too long, no longer an issue, at least in the early goings of this season. So the other thing about this in particular in week 2 is the quickness with which he makes the decision to run. His decisiveness to pull the ball down and run when the opportunities are there, which is different from panicking into running the moment that you feel any little bit of pressure. I think that he took a step forward from that from week 1 into week 2. In week 1, I thought maybe there were a couple of times where he was too hesitant to pull the ball down and run, Week 2, he was very decisive, and when he had an opportunity to run, he took it. At one point, going through some contact to go and pick up some extra yards and pick up a big first down. Those types of moments there are going to be ones that are going to continue to galvanize his decision-making in going out there and making the decision to run. A lot of folks have made a lot about his yards per attempt. We'll get to that here in a little bit because certainly you'd like to see it higher. But I will say that his 36.3% target rate of air yards of 10 or more yards. So these are passes that are 10 or more yards from the line of scrimmage through the air, not caught and run or anything like that. This is him throwing the ball more than 10 yards downfield. 36.3% of his passes have looked like that. That's 8th in the NFL. And so there is something there in terms of the Saints and Spencer Rattler being willing to take those shots, just maybe not connecting on those shots enough to push the average up from that week 1 game. So we'll see how things continue to move in that direction. But it doesn't seem like anybody's afraid to push the ball 10 yards, 15 yards down the field with Spencer Rattler. And then a couple of intangible things. I like watching his pre-snap work. He does a very good job managing the team at the line of scrimmage. He had one play to where he had lined up in the shotgun. It was in the red zone. Alvin Kamara was on his right hip. He made some calls, and then Alvin Kamara moved over to his left side, and then they ended up handing the ball going to the right, and they ended up picking up some good yards, and I think it was like a 9-yard run. It's little things like that of just orchestrating, whether it be checks, whether it's part of the play, whether he's changing things, I'm not sure. But in those situations, finding those moments to, where he is commanding and orchestrating the offense, I think that's part of what got Spencer Rattler the job in the first place as well, in addition to his on-field performance, was his ability to be able to orchestrate that Kellen Moore offense and run the operation. That's what Kellen Moore talked about over and over again this offseason: operation, operation, operation. Also, his accountability at the podium. He's not blaming guys for running the wrong routes or anything like that. He's saying, I put the ball in the wrong place. I can hit that pass. I got to be better on that, blah, blah, blah. I like hearing the accountability from the quarterback position here in New Orleans, which unfortunately was not always a given. Next up, a couple things that I think you can continue to improve on. 3 sacks that he took in this last game. One of them was like a quick pressure sack, so it is what it is. But obviously that week 1 game where he was sacked only once, you'd probably like to see him hovering around that as opposed to 3 sacks. 5.3 yards per attempt. This has been a big talking point. This is number 25 out of those 26 quarterbacks with at least 40 passing attempts. We'll see how that continues to progress, though, because like I said earlier, that 36.7 downfield target range of more than 10 yards is 8th highest in the NFL amongst that very same group. So eventually that average is going to start to push up. And then I think the other thing is just miscues, a little bit of inconsistency in terms of ball placement. You get a great throw to Juwan Johnson on the left sideline. You get a great throw to Rashid Shaheed deep down the left sideline as well. Put it over that outside shoulder where only he could get to it. But then missing a little bit on the connection with Chris Olave, getting the ball a little bit too far to the left where you're trying to place that pass before he even makes his break. You're throwing to a spot. He just needs to get to a spot where Chris Olave is going to be. And so, you're trying to recalibrate some of those things. So there's opportunities still for growth here. And not all these things, like even that inconsistent ball placement thing, is just as much a part of the connection and chemistry with the receivers that he's throwing to as it is an arm talent issue. Because again, you can see some of those other spots where he's making these spectacular throws down the field. And so once those other things start to settle in, this New Orleans Saints offense, going back to our opening segment here, will continue to open and open and open. And you can do that when you have a young quarterback that's growing and growing and growing. But he's got 2 big challenges coming up next in the next couple of weeks: Seattle and Buffalo. Let's see if he can keep it going from there. Up next, let's flip the script over to the defensive side. We'll do our deep dive into the Saints' run defense, which has surprisingly overshadowed their passing defense so far. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the best place to go to get in on the action when it comes to the NFL season, which is here and rolling. And FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for every kickoff every weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can get $5 put down for your first bet. And if that bet wins, you can earn $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can use that for same game parlays for an even bigger payout. You can get it on things like money line, spread, props as well, even live betting, which I absolutely love. And of course, if you're a new customer, what you want to go and do is find a big point spread and bet the money line on the favorite. That way, if you win that first $5 bet, you get that $300 in bonus bets. The Saints, big underdog, third largest underdog this week, up against the Seattle Seahawks on the road, +7. So are you ready to get started? Well, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints run defense was a big concern last year in 2024, but here in 2025, though early, they're showing some incremental improvement, and those improvements are definitely overshadowing what's been going on for the Saints passing defense so far this season. So let's dive into it. We'll take a look at a couple of different things, where things have gone well in run defense, where things can still improve in run defense, where things have improved relative to the Saints' positioning from last year in the run defense, and where some things in the passing defense still need to kind of take some steps forward. So a couple different targets that we're going to hit here as we go through our final segment of the show. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here. Don't forget, you can catch us every Monday through Friday over at 10 a.m. on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, which just got a big deal with DirecTV. So really, really exciting stuff there. Make sure you come and check us out. All right, so the Saints, two things that I want to highlight that they've done very well so far, or that tell you the story of how they've done so far when it comes to their run defense. The first thing is defensive rush success rate. So this is the percentage of defensive run plays, right, or run defense snaps, the percentage of them that are successful or considered successful for the Saints defense. That could be a tackle for a loss, that could be a no gain, that could be a short gain, right? That could be a 2-yard gain on 1st and 10. It could be a 4-yard gain on 3rd and 5. Like, there's a lot of different ways that this can kind of, stretch out in terms of what is success. But the percentage of defensive run snaps the Saints have taken, or run defense snaps the Saints have taken, that are successful. And then we'll also take a look at rush EPA. That's expected points added. That basically is just an efficiency metric that takes into consideration things like down, distance, field position, game situation, score, all that good stuff. So the short side of that is that a run on a 5-yard run on 3rd and 5 is going to be seen as more successful than a 5-yard run on 2nd and 15, right? Like those types of things. So for New Orleans, in defensive rush success rate, they sit at 63.8%. That's top 10 in the NFL. Remember that, top 10. I'll tell you why that's important in a second. As for rush EPA, which again is that efficiency metric that takes into consideration a bunch of game situation stuff, number 11 in the NFL. And so nearly top 10 there as well. The reason why I said remember top 10, and you can kind of just remember top 10 for both of these, right? Because the Saints are top 10 in one, they're number 11 in the other, so they're close to top 10 in the other. So for defensive run success rate last year, right, we're talking about improvements relative to where the Saints finished last year and are beginning this year. They were number 30 in the NFL. Get ready to hear number 30 a lot when talking about last year, by the way. But they were number 30 in rush success rate on the defensive side. They were also number 30 in rush EPA last year on the defensive side. So that's two places where I think you can immediately see that kind of tell the overall idea that, hey, the Saints run defense is in the process of improving. I'm not going to say has improved because it's only 2 games, but is in the process of improving. One of the other reasons why I think that the defensive rush success rate thing is so important is because sometimes, especially early on in the season, a run defense can be seen as middling or not doing well based on some big breakaway runs in each game. For instance, a 52-yard run by Trey Benson in that first game up against the Arizona Cardinals made that game look a lot worse for the Saints defense than it actually was. And so this just kind of gives you a glimpse of something that is relative to the entire smorgasbord, if you will, of what's going on for the Saints run defense. So overall positives there for the Saints run defense. Now, there are a couple of things that I wanted to look at in terms of the passing defense as well. That includes coverage as well as pass rush. And so for coverage, Saints right now tied for 15th when it comes to passing success rate, 56.3% success rate there. So a lesser success rate for the Saints passing defense than their run defense. So definitely something to keep an eye out on there. And then I want to highlight the Saints pressure percentage, not their sacks. Right now, sacks-wise, tied for number 2 in the NFL with 8 sacks. Would have never guessed that they would have been in that place here, 3.5 of them coming from Carl Granderson alone. But 8 sacks in the NFL, good job there. But a 22.2% pressure rate, according to our friends over at True Media. That is, say it with me, number 30 in the NFL. And so last year, where they were 18th in sacks and 18th in pressure rate, this year they're second in sacks with 8, but then they're 30th in pressure with 22.2% of a pressure percentage on the defensive side. So they aren't generating pressure at a successful enough rate or at a high enough rate. That's something that Kellen Moore has brought up a couple times already. But when they are getting pressure, they're finding ways to get to the quarterback or at least run the quarterback out of bounds before they can pick up a yard. And so I think that that's something that we're looking at there. Couple of things to consider as well. Yards before contact, Saints right now number 22 in the NFL. That's up from number 30 in the NFL last year. I told you we're going to hear that number a lot. And in number 18 in yards after contact, that's up from number 20 last year. And the last thing that I'll highlight is yards per carry. So this is just an efficiency metric, basic efficiency metric for stopping the run. The Saints were, guess, number 30 last year, and with 4.9 yards per carry allowed. That only Carolina was worse. This year, tied for number 17 with 4.2 yards per carry, holding the San Francisco 49ers to under 4 yards per carry, by the way, last week. That ties them with the Baltimore Ravens and the Los Angeles Rams. Much better company to be in. So the Saints rushing defense taking some steps forward. Still a lot of work to do, but taking some steps forward, kind of overshadowing the progress of the passing defense so far. All right. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, it's our Film Watch Wednesday, so we're going to dive in even deeper in terms of what we saw on the All-22 tape, and of course, keep you up to date with everything going on around your New Orleans Saints. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media, at Ross Jackson, N-O-L-A. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.